All right, let's just dive right into it. We're going to talk about something that's, a really complex and for many of us, a deeply personal topic, money, and how we handle it in the modern Muslim world. It often feels like you're stuck, right? You either have to compromise your principles or get involved in these strange, complicated workarounds that just don't feel right.
So picture this. You need a loan. You go to an Islamic bank, and they say, well, we can't charge interest. So instead, they cook up this whole scheme where you have to pretend to buy something. I mean, it could be anything, cattle, steel bars, whatever. You never see them, of course. The bank buys them on your behalf and then immediately sells them back to you, on paper, for a higher price. And that difference? That's your loan. The source material we're looking at today literally calls this a pathetic theatrical play. It's this bizarre financial dance, all to avoid a single word.
But here's the big question. What if this entire complicated song and dance is built on a complete misunderstanding? What if the very definition of riba that we've been working so hard to avoid isn't actually what the Quran was talking about in the first place? That's the rabbit hole we're going down today.
To get to the bottom of that, we have to start by challenging the most common, widely accepted definition of riba. The one definition that the entire multi-billion-dollar Islamic finance industry is built on.
So the way it's almost always taught is super simple and totally absolute. Any pre-agreed increase on a loan is riba, period. It doesn't matter if it's 1% or 100%. A single dollar of interest is treated the same as 1,000. And this black and white rule is exactly why all those complex and, let's be honest, kind of confusing financial products even exist.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The whole argument from our source material hangs on this one crucial phrase from the Quran, doubled and redoubled. For a long time, the traditional view has seen that phrase as just, describing what riba can be like. But this reinterpretation says, no, you're missing the point. It's not descriptive, it's prescriptive. It's literally defining the thing that's forbidden.
And that single shift changes everything. It means the Quran isn't prohibiting a reasonable, agreed-upon fee for using money. What it's actually prohibiting is a system of excessive, runaway multiplication. It's targeting those exploitative practices where a debt just spirals out of control, where the interest keeps piling up until it's double or triple or even more than the original loan. It traps the borrower in a cycle they can never, ever escape. So the line in the sand isn't zero interest. The line is the principal amount itself.
Okay, so if we accept this new understanding, the source points out that there are really two main ways this kind of forbidden exploitation happens. And what's fascinating is that only one of them is actually about lending money.
And this is so powerful because it shows the principle isn't just about loans. It's about preventing exploitation, period. The first forbidden extreme is about trade. Think of someone buying up all the wheat or all the onions in a town to create a fake shortage and then jacking up the prices to gouge people who are desperate. The second is what we've been talking about, letting the interest on a loan balloon until it's bigger than the loan itself. The common thread here, it's all about stopping systems that create injustice and hardship.
And this is where it gets kind of crazy. When you take this reinterpretation and apply it to the banks we all use, you get a shocking result. It turns out the labels Islamic and conventional might actually be getting in the way of seeing which one is more just.
Okay, let's play this out with a real-world example. Let's say you get a 5-year car loan, and after just 1 year you get a huge bonus at work and you want to pay it all off. Awesome, right? Well, with many Islamic banks, the total profit for all 5 years was calculated and locked in on day one. So if you pay early, you save absolutely nothing. You still owe the full 5-year amount. But at a conventional bank, interest is calculated as you go. Pay it off early, and all that future interest just vanishes. You save yourself 4 years' worth of charges.
And that leads to this incredibly powerful question from the source. Which one of those systems is actually more just? The one that locks you into the maximum possible cost and essentially penalizes you for being financially responsible? Or the one that rewards you by only charging you for the time you actually use the money? All of a sudden, the labels on the door seem a lot less important than the actual outcome for you, the customer.
Okay, so if a reasonable, agreed-upon fee is permissible, how do we justify that? How does that fit into the bigger picture? Well, the source argues it fits perfectly under the Quran's broader principles of trade and commerce.
So the argument here makes this really critical distinction. On one hand, you have a personal favor, what you might call a salfa. I lend you $100, you give me $100 back. That's a favor, not a business deal. But a bank loan? That's totally different. That's a commercial transaction, a bay. The bank isn't doing you a favor, it's providing a service. And what's the service? It's selling you the use of its capital for a specific period of time. That fee, the interest, is simply the price you willingly pay for that service. And that all boils down to the single most important condition for any ethical deal: mutual consent. As long as the terms are crystal clear, totally transparent, and both sides agree to them willingly, with no deception, no coercion, then it's just considered permissible trade. It's about fairness and honesty, not about playing word games.
So what does this all actually mean for us day to day? Well, it suggests we can build a totally new way of thinking about our financial ethics, one that's based on principles, not just paperwork. Look, the whole point is to shift our focus. Instead of getting lost in complicated contracts designed to avoid a word, we should be asking ourselves a few simple questions. Is this deal fair to everyone involved? Does it protect against exploitation? Is there clear, honest, mutual consent? And, this is the big one, is there a built-in safety switch so that the total profit can never, ever exceed the original loan? This gives you an ethical compass to navigate with, not just a rigid rulebook.
And that really leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. This whole reinterpretation is about looking past the technicalities to understand the deep ethical why behind a rule. So if we take that same critical lens, that same focus on spirit over letter, what other parts of our financial lives, from how we invest to how we get insurance, might start to look completely different?